Hello, everyone, and welcome to our lesson 2 in my home office. You will get used to this scene, to this background, as this is where I will be recording most of my pre-recorded lectures in this particular spot. So welcome to Ed Psych, and today we're going to have lesson 2 and lesson 3. We're going to start with the Ed Psych overview, and then we will jump into some research, how to do some research overall and particularly in Ed Psych. So what's going to happen is I will do lots of the recording of the content today. And then what I'll let you know is the discussion questions that we will then go into on our next class. So just what will happen is I will post a bingo sheet for next class, and what you will do is then I'll put you in rooms and you will just ask other colleagues some particular questions about learning styles, school experience, things like that. But I'll post that bingo sheet so you can either have it printed off if you want, or you can just have it on your computer. But be ready to have that for the start of next class. If you see me turning my head, I have 2 screens going on here, so try to come into the technology world of the 21st century. Okay, so also, just to get us kind of going, these are going to be your reading partners for the semester. So hopefully your name is on there. I didn't miss anybody. And please let me know if I spelt your name incorrectly, because I will use this list to be doing groupings and things like that. So basically what your partner and you will do is at the beginning of our collaborate time, I'll put you together and you'll have a bit of a chance to talk about the readings. So make sure that you are actually doing those readings so that you are not the lame partner that never comes with the readings read. What it'll do is it'll just help you really dive into these concepts and really start to hear somebody else's opinion about it and start to really form who you are as a future teacher. Okay, so just to let you know, these are some of the reading questions that you'll be answering on Thursday in our collaborate session. So what 5 basic planning concepts do teachers need to think about when planning for a new year, and why are these important? And why do you think being a reflective practitioner is an important part of being a teacher? So be ready to answer those. Okay, so my objectives for today, for lesson 2, will be hopefully to help you start to critique foundational education ideologies with specific to concepts in Ed Psych. I want you to start to formulate a personal philosophy of education identity as a teacher, and I want you to start to create in your mind what goes into creating a secure classroom environment. So basically, I want you to be doing this all on the journey to becoming the most amazing, can you see this? Amazing and inspiring teacher that you can be. Ultimately, that's why we are doing all of these things in education. So with that in mind, let's jump into some of the content for today. So basically, what is Ed Psych? What is going on in educational psychology? I'm going to move myself up here, I think, for this slide, and we'll see how that goes. Basically, Ed Psych is not just simply psychology applied to education. If you take the 2 factors, psychology is basically understanding principles that govern human behavior, and education, understanding the principles that govern teaching and learning, we come up with the definition that Ed Psych is understanding the psychological principles that govern interactive human behaviors involved in teaching and learning. And this is from page 8 of your reading. So this hopefully is just a little bit of a reiteration of what you read. So basically, it's a scientific study of psychology and education. We look at, I'm going to shut that light off so it doesn't halo me. Is that better? Now I don't have a big halo over my head. Basically, in Ed Psych, we look at what teachers do, how students learn, and how teachers can help students learn. That's the foundation of what we do in educational psychology. Basically, the goals of educational psychology are to enhance theoretical knowledge of basic psychological processes. Oh, now I'm psychological processes, and basically to improve educational practice both in learning and teaching. What we want to do is improve how we teach in the classroom. And so EdPsych helps us to understand why children are doing what they're doing, and then how can we take that knowledge and improve what's actually happening in the classroom. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of terms that you've seen a lot, but I really want you to dive into these particular terms. So learning and teaching. Learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior, knowledge, or perspective as a result of experience. So it depends, learning depends on lots of factors. It depends on the quality of instruction, depends on student motivation, depends on student engagement, and dependent on students' developmental readiness to learn. Okay? So we have to know all those things as educators. And so we have to, as educators, go for learning, which is permanent. It's not just the cramming of information into the brain. Have we all done this? Absolutely. We've all done this. Cramming information into the brain in hopes that it will stick at least until exam time. And then what happens at the end of the exam? When you walk out of the room, you forget everything. So is that actually really learning? Is that actually really learning? And so those are the kind of things that we have to think about as teachers. Instead of asking our students just to cram information in and spew it out on an exam, what kind of things can we do in the classroom? How can we teach? How can we engage students? How can we motivate students so that they actually learn? So there's actually this, oh, I think I have some tools here. Oh, but I go away. Interesting. I'm going to just try. Nope, sorry. I'm trying things on, freehand drawing. Sorry. Learning, we want to talk about, there we go, a permanent change in behavior, unlike just a change, or not even a change, but just cramming information in and then it not actually working. Oh, and I'm back. Look at that. So many fun tools on these things. Okay, so teaching then is one person's interpersonal effort to help others acquire knowledge, develop skill, and realize their potential. That's the definition of teaching for us. And basically teaching, the 5 points from your reading were that teaching is as you have to have an idea of your classroom and behavior management. You have to have some pre-instructional assessments. You have to know curriculum guides. You need to construct formative summative assessment, and you need to build on what students already know. So that's all in this attempt to help others acquire knowledge, skill, and realize their potential. So again, keep those terms in mind as we go through this particular course. On our next class, for our next class, is I want you to be ready to discuss with a small group, when did you actually learn something in school, either in elementary, secondary, or post-secondary? What did you learn, and why did you learn it? So thinking about learning as a permanent change in behavior. So be ready to discuss with a small group. When did you actually learn something? What did you learn, and why did you learn it? Okay, let's jump into the concept of you as teacher as a reflective practitioner. So basically, you will need to be a reflective practitioner. You need to have the mindset that you absolutely have to try some things as a teacher. You have to jump in and teach, but then it's what you do with that at the end of the lesson. So you look back at the lesson and you go, yeah, that was amazing because of I was organized. I knew where the kids were at in their cognitive level. I had everything prepared. Or why didn't it go well? Maybe I wasn't prepared. Maybe I really didn't realize that the kids didn't know I started here and the kids actually were here in their understanding. So that's the whole concept of a reflective practitioner. You have to be, and I'm going to just go through this, you are open minded and amenable to change. So you don't take offense when a lesson doesn't go well, or when maybe a colleague or administrator says, maybe try something like this. You embrace self-inquiry. So you're like, yeah, I want to find out so much more about the teaching practice that I am willing and open to do some self-inquiry. You feel they have, or a teacher, reflective practitioners feel they have an ethical responsibility to best facilitate their students' learning. Okay, so it's your job. You want to ethically you have that desire to be the best teacher that you can be in front of those students. You also choose to analyze and reflect on your practice. So you don't just go through the day, yep, yeah, that was good, and take off. You actually choose to reflect on your practice. And you don't simply just accept that that's the way that it has to be in the classroom. You actually go, no, I have more control over this than I think I do, and that's what I'm going to go after. And finally, you want to assess the effects of their teaching in order to improve their practice. So we have to reflect on, why did this happen? What could I have done differently? And what are the implications for my practice that I can learn from this particular situation? Ultimately, we want to be a reflective practitioner because we ultimately want to be the best that we can be in the classroom. Okay, so for our next class, I want you to think of a situation in your own life where you were in charge and something went wrong. So you were babysitting, dog sitting, a summer job, you're parenting, anything. Think of a situation. Did you think about it after and change how you approach the same situation the next time? And how does your experience relate to being a reflective practitioner in the classroom? So that's going to be part of our discussion for Thursday. Okay. When you are looking specifically, I got to make sure I don't put words in the corners of my PowerPoints, don't I? When you are a reflective practitioner in the classroom, you want to be thinking about these particular aspects. So what happened in the classroom? When, where, and what? Why did it happen? So you want to analyze from your point of view as well. So student perspective, that's really interesting. You have to be looking at that student perspective as well. What might it mean? Be open to a number of possibilities. And what are the implications for my practice, and how may my practice change because of this event and my reflection on it? This is a really, you have lots of things that happen in the classroom that you go, wow, what happened? Why did it happen? What does it mean? And how am I going to change for the future? You will have lots of these every single day in your classroom, and you need to set up now that sense and that drive to be a reflective practitioner. Okay, let's look at a particular model around reflective teaching. Okay, so this is called the model for reflective teaching. It's very original. Basically, you have a reflection or an event. Then you have an event. Here we go. You have an event. I'm going to try my little, oh, I disappeared. I'm going to go with an oval. Let's try oval here. So there's an event. Ooh, look at that. Fancy. There's an event that happens. Then what happens is there's a reflection time. Ooh, I didn't quite put that one correctly. Then there's some information gathering time. Oh, I need some practice on my ovals here. Then there's some decision making. That one's better. What are you going to actually do? And then some evaluation time. So how are you going to evaluate that? So let's look at, I'm going to focus on conjecture number 2 as an example. So let's look at this one. Oh, okay, I'm gotta get my, let's see, can I move it? No. Have to get my ovals under control. So how about I erase all of those and just start again. Okay, so I'm going to come back. So Mrs. Newby is nervous. She wants to become a confident expert. What can she do? So perhaps Mrs. Newby's nervousness is a manifestation of her lack of a potent teaching metaphor to embrace. So she could interview a couple of master teachers to ask what teaching metaphors they use. She could then contrast these metaphors with her own. Then, if her conversations with the 2 master teachers provide her with empowering metaphors, then the problem might be the lack of a potent teaching metaphor. And then the evaluation. How close is the relationship between her nervousness and her lack of a potent teaching metaphor? Does the embracing of an empowering metaphor correspond closely with the drop in nervousness? So you can see it's this complete model. So what I want you to do for our class on Thursday is I want you to actually think of yourself as Mrs. Newby and that you are needing to create a metaphor for teaching. So some metaphors for teaching is you might have heard people say, oh, teachers are entertainers, coaches, lion tamers, party hosts, circus masters, air traffic controllers, mentors, listeners. So what I want you to do is I want you to write down, what do you believe a teacher is, and what are your metaphors for who you want to become as a teacher? So the teacher as coach, listener, that kind of thing. So be ready with some of your own metaphors for you as a teacher. And then what we'll do is we will have a bit of a go with those and compare your metaphors to other student metaphors in the class. Okay, let's continue on with the idea. And again, this is we're giving you the big overview of Ed Psych here. So this is when we talk about Schwab's 4 commonplaces. Schwab, first of all, was I'm just going to read some of this, a leading curriculum theorist in education, but he also had degrees in English and genetics. I always think it's interesting to know a little bit about these researchers. What's less known about Schwab, though, is his deep commitment to his personal pedagogy and his unwavering support of teachers looking at their own practices and the consequences of them. He was committed to teachers analyzing their own practice. And he uses a metaphor of a tree, and I'm going to read this to you. So these are Schwab's words. You know those trees. Think about the trees out west. When you look at a tree from the south, you see one thing, but if you walk around to the north side, you'll see something different. There is moss growing on that side. Subtle differences, but important. If you look at this lesson from the specialist perspective, you will see one thing. However, what will you see from the teacher's perspective, from the learner's perspective, from the point of view of the community? Walk around that tree. So that's where he is coming from, is that we need to be reflective practitioners and we need to be thinking about these aspects of teaching. Sorry, trying to get control of my mouse here. So he's saying that in every teaching situation, you need to be thinking about the teacher, the topic, the setting, and the student. And for the ultimate student experience and learning experience, you need all of these particular components. Okay, so let's look at What is the outcome when teachers and researchers pay little attention to one of the commonplaces? Okay, so I'm just going to move myself over here. So think about what happens when in a classroom you have a teacher, you have the teacher who's focusing on the teacher and the subject without real regard for the student or classroom environment and community. What level of schooling does that remind you of? Elementary, secondary, post-secondary? Probably post-secondary is where it's all about the instructor and the subject, and then hopefully in education you will find that we actually want to bring in you obviously as a student and the classroom environment. And classroom environment is you feeling safe in the environment as well as the physical environment. So pros and cons, right? Let's look at teacher plus student plus setting without much content, without a real focus on content. That might remind you more of elementary school, where it's all about the teacher, student, and then the classroom environment, but the focus on content is not super important. Okay, so for our class discussion, I want you to think of two of your classroom experiences as a student. I want you to think of one positive and one negative. And now that you know about Schwab's 4 commonplaces, I want you to analyze what the teacher was doing, basing your analysis on Schwab's 4 commonplaces. And then discuss how the inclusion or exclusion of Schwab's 4 commonplaces affected your learning. So we're going to, in small groups, have a bit of a go with that. So think about those things before our next class. I'm going to stop the recording here. I'm going to finish the history of EdPsych on a different video. All right, see you in a bit.